Kalima, the community poet, chat with folks who speak on behalf of their respective communities. And this is a community that I don't even think I was even thinking of or was on my radar until I met this person through a different community that we're both part of. So I'm really excited to learn more about the things that they're into, about this person individually, because even though we've known each other for years now, we've never been in the same city. We meet each other in conferences and we engage on social media. So I'm super excited to welcome them to this podcast, to this conversation. They're also podcasters themselves. So it's also really dope to speak to someone who's been doing this a little longer than I have. So that all said, hey, welcome. Tell folks your name.
Hello, my name is Deborah Anderson.
Welcome. And what are your pronouns, Deborah?
My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Awesome. And tell folks about yourself.
So I'm Miss Deborah. I am in the animation industry. Professionally, I am a 3D modeler, but I am trying to, I have rebroken into the industry. My first job in animation was over 10 years ago in South Korea. And so I was actively doing 3D modeling out there. And I moved to Los Angeles in February of 2020, a month before the pandemic hit. So I had a good month of networking. And then those, 2 years of being underemployed. And then I just got a job at a studio in January. And so I have rebroken into the industry. I started in production as a production coordinator. And then I actually got hired to be an assistant editor, but the budget wasn't open till like later in the year. So they graciously allowed me to start as a production coordinator because I needed the money. And I just got my promotion for the job I got hired for to be an assistant editor in the past few weeks. So that's cool. I'm liking that because I now have 3 skill sets that I can kind of get a job for, because in the animation industry, particularly in California / Los Angeles, it's outside of working at Disney and Pixar, which can be full-time jobs, you're pretty much only on projects, so you're constantly looking for a job. And so to have like 3 skill sets that I can look for a job now, makes me feel much better, because Los Angeles is expensive. I went to Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York. And then I spent 12 years of my adult life after I graduated from college in New Orleans, where I was involved with the Urban League Young Professionals. That's how I know Dara. Yeah.
I was like, wait, you were connected to Rochester too? Like, you just all over the world.
Yeah, from Detroit to Rochester to New Orleans to South Korea, back to New Orleans, and now LA.
See, now, how did you get to South Korea?
I graduated in 2008 and couldn't find no job. And I was like, well, if I can't get a job in animation, the next best thing is living in a foreign country. And so one of my classmates that, interestingly enough, we didn't really talk like that. And so I was looking at her Facebook, and she was like bungee jumping and like rafting and stuff. And I don't know what made me ask her the question, because we were like cool, but it wasn't like we, conversed on a like regularly. And I just saw her pictures. I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm over in Korea teaching English. And I had that was maybe 2008, 2009, and I had never heard of that before. And so I just was like, okay, if I don't get a job in animation by March 2009, May 2009, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to Korea. And so that's how I ended up teaching English in Korea. And then the second year I worked at an animation company, accidentally got that job. That was not on purpose. I did not go to Korea thinking I was gonna be working in the animation industry. I could tell that story later if you want me to, but yeah, I did not do that on purpose, but it was awesome. I got to work on Family Guy, Cleveland Show, Batman the Brave and the Bold, and Scooby-Doo for my first job in the industry.
That is super dope. So, I mean, you already kind of told us what we're going to talk about specifically, but besides that, before we get into that, what communities are you part of? Do you represent outside of that one?
So first of all, I am an Anderson, so I represent my family. and I'm a Henry and I'm a Bonham, like my mom's family and my stepmom's family. And let's see, I'm Black. I'm a woman. I'm from Detroit, from the East Side, Casual and Mac. I'm from the animation community, the Urban League movement, like social justice in general. Like my dad's nickname for me is Angela Davis. So like I was, when I was kind of going through college in my 20s, I'm like, why was I reading Native Son in 8th grade? And it's like, oh, like my dad indoctrinated me. And I think I didn't even make the realization until, like, I made the realization once he started talking about my nieces. But I before I moved to Los Angeles, there's this guy Claude Anderson who was on the Breakfast Club, and he has all these like economic books. And I was like, Dad, can you buy me these books? Because I'm moving, so I can't like really, I don't want to put my money towards it. And so he bought me the books, and he's like, oh, you ain't already read these books? Your nieces read these books. And I'm like, so you getting to them too? So yeah, I'm trying to think. Kind of like not anymore, but I'm trying to get back to it, like the basketball community. Like I have goals of being like, because I used to play, I've played with guys since I graduated from high school, because I played at varsity in high school. And there's all these like older white guys that play that's in their 60s and stuff. And I want to be like this older Black lady in my 50s that has changed her game enough to be able to still be competitive, but I ain't like trying to keep up with nobody, but I'm still like making shots. So that's my goal in life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's communities I'm forgetting, but those are the main ones.
Awesome. Your basketball story is like me with my locks. My dream always when I started growing locks was to like it. So when I started growing locks, I kept them really short on purpose. So for years they were super short. And then I think I hit like mid 30, maybe when I hit my 30s. So I started growing locks when I was in my 20s. So maybe in my 30s, I started letting them grow. And so they were growing like pretty like mid shoulder, mid arm. And I was like, when I'm older, I want them to be the long flowing gray locks. I want to be that elder that you see with the just full gray head of locks that go all the way. I want to be that person. That person, when you see them walk in the room, you know they had a life. And you're like, yes, 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 auntie, yes, queen, yes, sister. Like that person. My neck will never let me do that. I discovered my locks cannot go past the length that they've been. So
like, what are we doing? Oh my God.
Exactly. My neck is like, no, there's a length limit, and that's where we're going to stop. But so I've had to let go of those dreams, but I will have the full gray head of locks, good Lord willing. But so when you talk about that dream, I'm like, yes, I feel that.
What's funny is like, I feel like as Black women growing up, it's always like this destiny, like we're always trying to grow long hair. And so once I went natural, because like the reason I went natural was because I had figured out how to do my hair in Rochester, and then I moved to New Orleans with that humidity, and I just was like, I give up. So like the permed hair had to be cut off. And my aunt always wanted me to like transition, but like 2 different textures, like I don't have the capacity for that. So I was just like, I had just permed my hair like the week before, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna cut it off. And so then I like, okay, I'm gonna grow my hair long in a natural form. And because I'm like, I just need to get to the length where I could put in a ponytail. My hair is too thick for that. So like my hair has to be longer than the normal person's hair to be able to put in a ponytail. And I don't even think I ever got there. I was able to put like a bun on the top of your head but putting it in a ponytail, like I used to do when I had permed hair, it was just like, this is never gonna happen. And I shed so much, and I sweep every day, and I'm just like, I don't want this long hair anymore. And like, doing the twists, because I mostly wore my hair in twists, and it's like my arms hurt the longer my hair is getting. I'm just gonna go short. And so like that freedom from like this Black woman thing where like our hair has to be long, I was like, I'm free from that. My hair will be short. Like, I don't care.
I hear you. I mean, I did not know how to wear my hair in a fro state. Every time I wore it, I felt like a tomato. so I didn't do it. Like because my face is so round that it just felt rounder, that I was like, it never looked like it felt like it looked right. And the moment that I had to do it for like the 2 days or the day that I did it, I felt like a 40-year-old, and I was in my 20s, and I was like, this doesn't work. I've aged myself significantly in a very short period of time. And so I accidentally fell into locks, and I was like, oh, I recognize her. And so I've been wearing locks since, but I don't know if locks is forever. I would like them to be, but they take their own toll. So
I thought about locks, because locks, like, I feel like is a guaranteed way to grow your hair. Because like people who was bald headed, like they get locks now. It's like long, long locks. But I was like, man, I'll get like phantom comb. Like, you know how when people remove their arm, like they get phantom arm and they still feel the arm. Like, if I get locks, I'm gonna like want to comb it. Like, it's just not. That's not what it's for. And so I was like,
yeah. I mean, I find myself playing in my hair like I used to when my hair was natural and not in braids, and like I pick at my hair way more than I should, like, and I'm just like, this is not good for my hair. So it is, I want to, like, and I want to brush my hair sometimes. I'm like, brush what? Like, there's not, you can't, that does not work with this hair. So
right.
it is, yeah, yes. Yes, yes, I hear you. So so I assume, and you know what they say about assuming, but since we started with what with your tell me about yourself, tell us specifically what community you're going to be speaking on behalf of today.
So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of like generally the Black animation community, but possibly the Black female community in animation, but Black animation.
Awesome. So is it like, since you just put that possibly female, do you find are there a lot of women that are doing it as well, or?
There is a good number. Like the point of my podcast that I have is that we are few in number, but they're more than we realize. And so I'm always discovering new people. And as a Black woman, I do feel like I need to get more women on my channel, because like I'm trying to represent all of us, and so to just have a bunch of dudes or whatever is like, okay, why am I in this space if I'm not going to provide something that is being forgotten? So there are a number of us in the animation community at various levels, but we're still a small number.
Awesome. So I'm gonna go back to that backstory, since you set it up before. You said you were in Korea, yes, and you were there to teach English, but somehow second year you were in animation and working for all these amazing shows. So how did that come to happen?
So I do have a degree in animation, so it did make sense. It wasn't like that random, but yeah, I was going there, you know, because I had like a Verizon bill that I couldn't pay, and I was like, go get a job. And then I ended up getting to Korea and then forgot about the Verizon bill, so it went into collections. And they called me at like 3 a.m. like Korean time and had an attitude, and I'm like, ma'am, this is not your money. Like, but anyway. But yeah, so I was teaching English, which is very fairy tale land. Like, particularly when I went, I think it's harder to do, like it's at least harder to get into the position these days, because you have to have like more credentials. But back then it was like, be from one of these 5 countries: America, Canada, England, South Africa, Australia, maybe Ireland, and then have a degree in anything. Like, but now they like want you to have like the little certificates and stuff like that. So it was very easy, like, and I went to a public school, because public schools are easier. Like in Korean culture, they have these things called hagwons, which the kids will go to public school, and then they do these academies that they go to from like maybe 4 to maybe 10 at night, and that's how they are more competitive than we are, because they're in school all day. And the hagwons, I heard, are harder to teach at and stuff like that. So I was like, yes, got at a public school, so I would have maybe like 4 classes a day. I'm saving, like, I only made maybe $28,000 a year, but a cost of living was not that bad. So I'm like saving half my paycheck, even with that low salary, and sending half of it to pay for bills and have a savings account. So it was very like fairy tale, like this is easy work. I personally decided like, okay, my co-teachers who are Korean and they're the English teachers, they're teaching them the grammar. So I'm going to decide upon myself to like try to get them to talk, because it was known that Koreans are good, and I'm sure this is for a lot of language learning, but they are good at writing and reading, but they weren't good at speaking and listening. So they might know a lot, but they can't articulate. And I feel like I experienced that in Spanish when I learned that in high school too. So I was like trying to always get them to talk as much as possible. And so like it was coming up on like, oh, do you want to renew your contract and do this a second year? And I was really close to one of my fraternity brothers. I have to tell you how I met him, which is another weird story. But one of my fraternity brothers, I was like always like hanging out with him, and I was telling him about, you know, the renewing, and he's like, "Don't you have a degree in animation?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." And you know, the further you get away from, you know, graduating or out of your industry, the harder it is to get in. So I was like, okay, so I guess I'm gonna go back to America. But first, I've never seen an animation studio, so let me just see if I can see a Korean one. So I just looked up all these Korean animation studios and sent emails to all across Korea, not just in the city. Like I was living in Gwangju, which is like the south. There's two Gwangju, so I was in the southern one, and then you know, everybody knows Seoul if they know Korea. And so I sent it to a bunch of people. An incubator in Gwangju responded, and so they had like a bunch of little animation companies there, and this woman took me around. She was really nice, and she, like, I wasn't looking for a job, but she was like, yeah, if you can't speak Korean, then you can't make it here. And so I just toured that, and then a company called Digital Emation responded in Seoul. So I like went up there, they took me around. And I remember I went into the 2D room, and there was like cubicles on each side, and there's like long pathway. And at the end of the pathway, I turn right and I see a Black man. And I'm like, what? All the things I thought I was going to see at this animation studio, I didn't think I was going to see a Black person. And so Carl Linton, he was the overseas director for Cleveland show. And so they introduced me to him, and then like I went back to the president's office because the president and vice president were taking me around, and they're like, oh, do you have a demo reel? And a demo reel is just like what we call a portfolio. It's a video where you kind of put clips of your work for recruiters. And I was like, no, but I can. And so I went back to Gwangju in between classes, after school, on the weekend for the next 4 months. I worked on my demo reel, put it together, and like 4 months to the day, I think I sent it back to them, and they were like, oh, we would like to invite you back up to Seoul. And I'm like, okay, if I'm spending money, are y'all gonna hire me? Because why am I coming back up here? But they did hire me. And like I remember sitting in the office and being like, okay, when you're an English teacher, they provide housing. And I'm about to be in a real world, and I don't know where I'm gonna live, but I felt like maybe God wouldn't present this to me if it wasn't going to be figured out. So I just said yes, but in my mind I was like, where am I live? But the vice president, she was wonderful. She helped me find a place. Like I stayed at this place where this young lady, she was Korean, she would allow foreign exchange students like to live at her apartment. So there were maybe 3 rooms. And like the second year, I didn't know none of the people that I lived with, because I was working 12-hour days, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I didn't even buy groceries because I ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner at work. And so yeah, that's how I say I accidentally got a job in animation in Korea, because I just was trying to tour places to see what an animation studio looked like. I didn't know they were going to offer me a job. So yeah. And it just so happened I get to work on Family Guy. It's my first, like I got my name in the credits for my first position. And like people in my industry sometimes work 10 years to get their name in the credits. So yeah.
That's impressive though. That's huge.
Yeah. And really quickly to say how I met my fraternity brother. So go back to like I think I did get my placement in Korea to teach English, but before I left, So I'm a Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and the Sigmas, who are our brother fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, they were having their conclave in New Orleans. And so I am naturally an introvert. I don't need to go places, but I was like, oh, let me go show my face like for 2 seconds, since my people was in town. And so I went to like the Hilton or wherever, and I literally like I went in there, and there was like this long table in the lobby where all these people were sitting, and like Cheryl Underwood was sitting because she used to be our national president. And so I like went around went the one way toward and on the table, and then like kind of circled back, and then was like, well, I showed up. And I was about to be gone, but then there's like by the door, there was like this group of Sigmas that were sitting there. And I don't know if they called me over or whatever, but I ended up going to talk to them. And it just so happened like every Sigma that was sitting at that table was either living in Korea or just came back from Korea.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like telling them like, yeah, I'm about to be like teaching English in Korea. And it was one of those things like, yeah, okay. Like you're about to go to Korea. Like, yeah, we believe you. And so I ended up staying in contact with my friend Derek from meeting him at that table. And like, he actually also, he didn't know me, but he actually helped me with some of the money to get to Korea because I was like poor. And so there was like all these things I had to do, and I wasn't having the money. He like let me borrow the money. And
Wow.
so I feel like that's the power of the fraternal network, is like people sometimes erroneously like, oh, you're buying your friends, but it's like instant family. Like this dude did not know me, and he gave me money to get to Korea. And then once I got there, we were like the closest of friends. And he's the one that was like, don't you got a degree in animation? And so it was crazy. I was like, out of all the like, because I was literally about to leave, and out of all the tables that I stopped at like people who were like living in Korea. That was crazy.
It was supposed to be. That's the
Yeah.
point. It was supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's fascinating though. So then you forgot to mention that you were part of the Divine Nine community as well then.
Yes, I am part of the Divine Nine community. I knew I was going to forget some community.
You are the second. I've not done a whole lot of interviews, and depending when this releases, you may be before or after the other person, but you are so far the second D9 person that have been interviewed so far. So
yeah. On my podcast, I do these YouTube lives. I did one this morning, and I did one like Divine Nine in animation, and it was like, I felt like all the people in the Divine Nine that are in animation were on that video, because I was like struggling to find, because typically art schools don't have fraternities and sororities, or you just like, or if you go to a school that has them, that's not really your wheelhouse. Like even people who knew me in high school would not have ever guessed that I would be a part of a sorority, because my personality didn't like lend itself to that. But for me, it was like, as soon as I saw the benefit, I was like, I can do it. And Zeta has helped me grow so much, because I became a member spring 2006, and so that was like April, and we would have our election for positions for the next year before the school year was over. And so April 2006, I was a member, and then by May 2006, I was the president for the next year. And so before then, growing up, like I had my mom send me my kindergarten progress reports. Like my kindergarten progress report said, she does her work, but she does not talk. And that pretty much continued through high school. Like I was very, like I am still quiet, but I can string 2 sentences together now. So in college, I was like all about my self-growth and like trying to learn how to have a conversation. And so Zeta helped me do some of that too, where before that, I never thought I was going to be the president of anything. And then, so the juxtaposition of like, okay, when I became president of Zeta, I never thought I was going to be a president of anything. But when I became president of the Urban League of Louisiana Young Professionals, I was like, yes, I'm going to be president. Like, this makes sense. So
that's awesome. That is, oh goodness. So yeah, actually, now that I think about it, she's actually a Zeta too. So the other person was also a Zeta, is also a Zeta. That's hilarious. So we, for those people who do not know, have met through the National Urban League Young Professionals. I was the community service chair for the New York chapter, and you ascended to the presidency of the New Orleans chapter. So yeah, I mean, we probably crossed paths when your predecessor was president, because Ricardo, because he's actually, like, I don't know if you, in my memoir, there's a story about him. He's in the story. I just renamed people.
Nice.
But and like at first I renamed him, something was so obvious. Like I renamed him Roberto, and I was like, the same person.
Yeah, sometimes people accidentally call him Roberto, so that would have been obvious.
Yeah. So I renamed him, and I mean, he knows everyone. If you know the people if you were around for these stories, you know the real people. Yeah. But like it was about the St. Louis conference, because that's when I broke my arm, and he was integral in the revelation moment of me trying to get to the hospital. So he's in that story. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely appreciated your chapter, and just I also like New Orleans. So I don't know that I knew anyone in New Orleans when conference was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
But I definitely also just liked that city back then when I visited.
I think when the New Orleans conference was happening, do you remember what year that was?
Don't make me lie to you.
Like I feel like I was just coming back from Korea, and so I was kind of getting replugged in. So like I was there for some stuff, but I know NYP people be like that New Orleans. They still be talking about New Orleans conference to this day. To this day.
I mean, the problem is I'm so mad about that conference, and in that, like, I've been to a million conferences by that point. I was stupid, and I did not think about the way the buses ran. So I didn't go on the bus immediately. So I missed the after party that Stevie Wonder was at. I was at the gala, but I did not get on the bus. And so I did not know where the after party was. So I did not make it to like the amazing moment where he shows up at the after party too. But having him at the gala was amazing in itself. So that conference was really, and it was a pretty spectacular, special conference. I'm just going to say that. It was a special one. So yeah. But so something beautiful about your community.
Something beautiful about my community, and if we're gonna go to the Black animation community, is like us all working together. Like even this morning doing the YouTube live that I did, it was called Realizing Wakanda, Black animation, and just discussing like how can we, like, what is our vibranium, and like how can we tap into all these things to bring that Black animation community to another level, and just having people to have that discussion with in the first place, but also having the people that watch, and just like there's so many people, Diverse Tunes, which one of the founders was on that that live, and then Don Terrell, he interviews people, his because my platform, I'm purposely only interviewing people in the animation industry, but he kind of expands that and goes into like illustration and comic books and stuff like that. And then Black and Animated is a big group in our industry that is doing a lot of things. So they're comparable to like the Latinx in animation and the Asians in animation. So they're one of the big organizations in our community. And so there's a lot of people that care. Also, I think because there's a lot of various personalities in the animation community, but a lot of people are kind of like shy, anxious, all that stuff. But in my experience interviewing these people on my platform, particularly the veterans, they're very open to being contacted. Like there's a prominent person in my industry called, his name is Dan Haskett. He actually designed Ariel from Little Mermaid. And so like when I interviewed him, he's like, yeah, when I worked out, because this was, I think this was pre-pandemic. And so he had an office at Warner Brothers, and he's like, there's these like young Black people that work here, but they are afraid to talk to me and afraid to stop by. And so there's like, with certain personalities, there's this like intimidation factor that people have. And it's like, no, these people are human beings. They're open to like you coming to speak to them. There's some people who have that ego where it's like, I didn't have a good experience meeting that particular person, but for the most part, a lot of the veterans are very open to talking about animation or anything. And there's a section of my YouTube videos where I actually list a lot of the projects that they worked on, just so it could be like, oh man, in my childhood, I watched this TV show or this movie and a Black person worked on that. So, yeah.
So how did you get it? Like, why animation for you? Like, how did you know that this was your path?
So a lot of people's path, like a lot of my peers are like, yeah, I watched Lion King or I watched Little Mermaid, and I was like, I'm gonna do that. I was like, I still have a VHS collection in my bedroom of like VHS tapes. I would draw from the VHS tapes people thought I traced. I have these Disney books. I bought them off eBay because I'm always talking about these Disney books. And I was like, I should have them in my house. They're not my particular set, but they're like the set that I'm always talking about. So there's these Disney books. I would like always be drawing from those books and the VHS tapes people thought I traced. But I never, for some reason, I was not like my peers where I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And so, but also because I was good at math. And so I went through wanting to be an architect. I wanted to be an industrial designer. And then before I found animation, I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And so how I found animation as a career, despite being surrounded by Disney and other, and like Warner Brothers and all those people, luckily I was smart. And so my father is a professor. He knew that we could do dual enrollment. I have a twin brother, so we could do dual enrollment. In Michigan, you have to take this test. I can't remember, it wasn't the PSAT, it was like this, I think, Michigan had the MEEP, Louisiana had the LEAP, like I think it was one of those type of tests where if you take it early, you don't have to take it early, but I took it early and passed it, and then they'll give you money to go take college courses. And so I took it in 10th grade. And so my junior and senior year, I took 7 classes at Schoolcraft Community College in Livonia, Michigan. And the 7th class was animation. So I took like Adobe Illustrator, I took Photoshop, I took 2 After Effects classes, Macromedia Director that don't even exist no more, Macromedia Flash don't exist no more, and then 3ds Max, which I only used that program in that class because and I just felt like I'm both creative and analytical, and I felt like 3D animation in particular melded both sides of me very well. Because like 2D animation, like when I was in college, I put off taking my 2D animation course. It was only one that was required. I put it off for as long as possible, and then I BS my way through it because I can draw, but for me, 2D animation, it felt like I'm drawing the same thing over and over again, which you're not, but that's what it felt like. And that's why I can't do like children's books anymore too, because I'm like, I don't like this. And so I feel like animation, like I feel like this could be applied to anything, but animation, every part of animation is tedious. What tediousness do you like? I like the tediousness of being a 3D modeler. Like if you are watching this, my background is a Batmobile, the Michael Keaton 1989 Batmobile. I modeled this in Autodesk Maya. And so during being a 3D modeler, you build everything in the world. Like when you open a 3D program, it is empty. You have to create everything in it. So when you watch Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, Blue Sky, all these different companies, when you watch these animated movies, people created everything in there. We don't have like, oh, I'm gonna create a live action, just there's trees already out here. Like, no, we gotta create the trees. We gotta create the humans and all that stuff. So yeah, I felt like, and I think I had a history of like liking to build things. Like anytime my mom or I don't remember building stuff when I was living with my dad, but when I was with my mom and she would buy like a little piece of furniture, I'm like, I'll put it together. And so I feel like it kind of is in line with, liking to build things.
Awesome. So you just mentioned a book, and I do know there is a book that exists because I own it. Do you want to tell us about that?
So I created a book named The Black Hair Alphabet. Like, even though I came out with that book, I was like, I didn't think of myself as an author. I just was like, I did a daily art challenge. My own art challenge, because there's art challenges that are created out there, but I did my own daily art challenge, and I created all these images in like one Memorial Day weekend. I just was like, I got all these images, I could put it in book form. And then I figured out on Amazon, KDP, Kindle, whatever.
KDP. Yep.
Yeah. I was like, okay, let me figure out how to publish a book in like a Memorial Day weekend. And so that was like the long and the short of it. I wasn't like, I'm an author and I'm about to like write a book. Because like also the words in there is like A is for Afros. So I'm like, that's not the most like difficult writing. But then once I came out with the book, and then people were like, oh, can you sign it for me? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess people do that. It just was like a weird experience where I'm just like, oh, okay. And then I had this thing where like, I'm signing it for people's children. And then I'm like, dang, what do I say? Because to me, I'm just like, let me just say some art, like, let me just write some arbitrary thing, but they could take it and be like, this is what kept me throughout my time. And so I'm like trying to figure out what can I write that is like meaningful and not just write anything. And so I'm just like, okay, let me come up with like maybe 2 or 3 phrases that I can just put in everybody's book that is meaningful, but it's still like, I thought about it for 2 seconds. So yeah.
So no more books in your future then?
I'm willing to do more books. It just was like, I didn't label myself as an author. And the reason I did the art challenge, I wanted to say that is that, back in the day playing video games, a lot of guys were complaining about the avatars and how, okay, if I am a Black dude and I'm playing like a basketball game or some avatar, all they have is afro, bald, maybe dreads. And there's so many other hairstyles that both men and women have. And so I was like, maybe with my current skill set, because I do want to get into digital sculpting. I did take a class early this year and I'm getting more comfortable with digital sculpting, which is a more realistic way to do certain things. I was like, okay, in 2017, with my current skill set, let me do a daily challenge where I create a hairstyle for each, like a Black hairstyle for each letter. And not all of the letters are exclusively Black, because I'm like, first of all, there's only so many letters, like there's only so many hairstyles. So, towards the end of the alphabet, you're just making up stuff like X braid, X is for X braid. Like, what is that? I don't know, but I did it. So like, I think maybe Z braid, I don't know, but I was like, I gotta make something up. And so I did a letter for each, like I did a hairstyle for each letter. And that was why, because of like the representation of like video game avatars was the kind of catalyst.
Awesome. So representation, I don't even know what the question is in my head, but it is tied to that because how is it being like, there's a lot of places where we're underrepresented, just period. And then there's a struggle there. How is it, do you find yourself in the animation world having to deal with struggles that come with being underrepresented in the workforce?
Yeah, because a lot of my, like in Korea, I was, international token, so much less sleazy to be an international token than a Black token in America, because they would show me off and stuff like that. But it was a good experience. Like they kind of warned me about my director because he was like known for being mean, and like people in other departments didn't want to go talk to him. But the lady in background who shared a room with us, she told me like, I think you made Eddie nicer. So like, I don't know how I did that, but he couldn't yell at me because I wasn't fluent in Korean and he wasn't fluent in English, so he couldn't yell at me like that. but somehow I made him a nicer. But then having my career in the South, yes. Like, and it's like some of it is like very, and like none of it was like, some of it is like in the North where you're like, is it actually happening? So some of it was like that in the South because, you know, we're in the 2000s by that point, but it was still very obvious in certain instances, and some of it I feel like was unconscious bias where they probably don't even realize what they're doing. But like, I feel like for someone who is in their 30s and had you know, the short-ish comparably career that I've had, I have too many stories and compared to how long I've been in anybody's industry. And so I was just telling somebody, like at one place I worked, I literally kept a draft, a Gmail draft of like documentation of everything they did to me. And then one day it just like disappeared. And I don't think they did it, but I was like, where did it go? And you know, when it's a draft, it's not in the trash because you haven't sent it yet. So I was like, but yeah, I had too many stories. I actually have a couple videos on my YouTube channel where I do a part 1 and a part 2 of like my experience as a Black animation, like a Black female professional. And I actually had a part 3 that I just never came out with. I essentially sat down for an hour and a half and told everything that I've ever, at that point, had ever. Like one thing I told somebody recently, I had a situation at one of the companies where the lady was actually trying to help me, which makes it even crazier. So one of my coworkers, she worked at a community college on the side, and she was trying to get me to get a class too. And so the contact person, and you know, we communicated in Skype. So this is actually written. I still have the screenshot. Like, she was like, "Oh, reach out to this person and mention me." Because I'm more of a known figure than you, like an unknown pissant kid with nappy hair. And then she's like, well, until recently. And I was like, because I didn't ask her about what until recently meant, but I feel like it was like I used to have a bigger afro and then I had just cut my hair down. And so I was just like, first of all, like I always kept my hair in twists, and if I had an afro, like my dad always growing up was like, don't leave the house looking like an unmade bed. And so I still like, for the YouTube live this morning, I was putting on this shirt and it was wrinkled. I was like, I gotta iron it. Like I can't be looking like an unmade bed. So like I was like, if I had an afro, it was always perfectly coiffed. Like I never ran out the house looking crazy. So like nappy head, like that's your perception of Black hair. And so at that point, it was like, when she said that, it was just like, you know, having to wait 24 hours to be like process what she said to me in a situation where she's trying to help me. And then me, a 20-something year old Black woman, having to sit down a 40-year-old white woman and tell her why that was inappropriate to say. Like, why do I have to do that? And so that was like an extreme version. I mean, I wouldn't say extreme because there was stuff I dealt with like on a daily basis in other positions. But yeah, and then coming to California, I just was like, as a person where my dad nicknamed me Angela Davis, I'm gonna find some racism. Like y'all out here thinking it don't exist, but I'm gonna see it. And so like there is certain things that I've experienced. And what's crazy is like working in a space one time with other Black and brown people and still experiencing the same thing. So that's the white supremacist structure of like, how I'm with my people and I'm still experiencing the same thing I did with white folks.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting.
We have internalized a lot. And, you know, in the episode I just recorded and will definitely come out in a different sequence. So by the time this comes out versus that, people will have forgotten the other one because it would have been a while ago. But we were talking about the ways in which we've internalized it, the ways in which like that episode was about mixed race children. And we were discussing how when we talk about mixed race children, we almost always thinking about mixing white with
Yes.
And she's not, no one's white in her family.
Right. That's happening in the commercials, where now with more diversity, it's not like, oh, have a Black couple, an Asian couple, a Hispanic couple. It's like, oh, all of the couples have to have white person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not diversity. Why y'all always got to be involved?
Yes. Yes. And so, I mean, colorism is real.
Mm-hmm.
And colorism is just a byproduct of racism.
Yeah.
It's the child of.
Yeah.
And so it is not surprising that you would find it when we're all together too, because how
Mm-hmm.
many of our parents have told us to straighten our hair?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of us have said, oh yeah, it's fine, but just don't darken the family. Like all of that is the stuff that we've been taught in our households. So
And you don't not have to be white to be an agent of white supremacy.
Very much so, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think I just feel like in multiple spaces, to even in California, is dealing with the idea of people approaching me, because I feel like, in addition to racism and sexism, because as a double minority, you're just like, I don't even know which one you're doing to me, but I know it's affecting me. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm Black or a woman, but also something that I deal with a lot, and it's really close to the racism and sexism, is ageism. Because I look 10 to 15 years younger than I actually am, people are always approaching me as if I'm like in college or a recent graduate, and I'm just like, I am in my 30s, like I am a grown person, like with a job, like. And even like in certain spaces in work where they're like trying to give like, oh, make sure you speak up, make sure. I'm like, y'all are giving me such basic advice, like what, who is my age is not doing this right now. Like, this is so basic. Like, leave me alone. I already know how to handle myself. But there's certain personalities in the animation industry where they could be older than me. And like, for my platform of like interviewing animation professionals, there's people who are like 40, 50, 60 who have said no because they are introverts. Like, they do not want to be interviewed. They don't want the spotlight. So there are those personalities. But I feel like people are always stepping to me as though I am not knowledgeable, as though I am ignorant, and they don't have to be explicitly saying it, but I feel it when in the way you approach me, and oh, let me make sure this is right. Like, I perform, my normal is other people's overachieving. I'm doing it right. If it's been taught to me properly, I'm doing it right. So you don't have to double check nothing I'm doing over here.
I have been having a big problem with the English to English translation with me, because I either am accused of going too much into the weeds, so therefore sharing too much information, or I'm not saying enough. So oftentimes non-Black people feel the need to go, oh, what Dara is saying is, and I'm going, I have 2 master's degrees. I'm pretty sure I have 4 books. I don't really speak slang like that, or AAVE. Sometimes when it's appropriate, but I'm not really that person. I am an introvert. I am an analyzer, so I can get caught really quickly analyzing, struggling to speak at times because I'm trying to get the right thoughts out. But I'm pretty sure I know how to say the words that I'm trying to say. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, you can ask me and I can clarify. But I don't need an English to English translator. But it only happens to me, the darkest person in the room. And I'm going, I wonder, what's that about?
Right.
If you don't do that to anybody else, but you're always prepared to do it to me. Is it that I am not speaking properly? Because when I was in Urban League, everyone understood all the things I said.
Right.
How many meetings do we have in Urban League where we have to do public speaking if you were on a board, because we called the boards back then. Now it's leadership, whatever it's called. But when it was a board back then, how many meetings did we have to do public speaking? How many times did we have to make a case in front of people about something or speak to community people, like whatever. Whenever we had to speak to people. And so how many times did we have to do that and people understood what we were saying? So it's always fascinating when we're in the company of other people that suddenly they don't understand any words that come out of our mouths.
And it's crazy to like to be like Black person and your Black coworkers that you're working with are, you know, doing tasks correctly, and the white people are dropping the ball, but it's not acknowledged that they're dropping the ball. It's always approaching you as if you're the issue. And it's like, I'm actually picking up the ball. Everything that, like, I have to correct people's work all the time. I'm not putting them on blast, but like, and I've spoken up in meetings like, this person is doing it bad. Have you broached the subject in those meetings that you're in with their boss or with them? Oh no, I told you because I wanted you to bring it up that they're doing it wrong. Like, why do y'all not hold your people accountable?
Yes, because they have to figure out how to fix us. So it's always it is a, yeah, continue.
Me being from the Midwest, and like when I was on the East Coast, I had no issues being direct. It's not rude in the East Coast, or like, oh my God, living in the South and being direct, being rude. It's like, no, it's not. But I am able to communicate directly what is my issue. And then people take it through their filter of like, oh, Deborah said that this is happening. That what that means is like, no, it means exactly what I said. You ain't got to interpret it or misinterpret it. Like, I said what I mean. And so their solution, and this is, at least they got it honest, because they be solving things nationally, and it's like, that's not what we asked for. Like we asking y'all to stop redlining, and y'all in the Texas real estate board talking about, we gonna stop calling the master bedroom master. What does that?
That's the least of our problems. It's the least of our problems.
Though. So hey, they are experts in solving the issue that you are not bringing up.
Yes.
So, they got it honest.
Facts upon facts.
These are facts, not opinions.
So, what is a unique fact about your community?
Repeat that.
I'm sorry. What is a unique fact about your community?
A unique fact about the Black animation community is that there are not only two of us. Like, like I've interviewed over 60 people on my platform, and that's not even half my list. So
wow.
There are people who become either mainstream famous or animation famous, and they kind of are recycled. So there's like Floyd Norman, who's like the most famous person in our industry currently. He's 81 years old. He was like one of the first Black people. I think he says that there was another Black person that started because he was working at Disney when Walt Disney was still alive. And so, and then there's Bruce W. Smith, who created Proud Family and now Louder and Prouder. And then there's Peter Ramsey, who was a co-director on Into the Spider-Verse. Frank Abney is pretty popular. He's an animator that's worked on like different Pixar stuff. And he had, hopefully it's still on Netflix, but there's an animated film called Canvas that he created independently that is on Netflix. It's a short film, maybe 9 minutes long. Well, there's like people who are animation famous. There's people who are kind of like other people know, but there's way more people. And that's what I like about my platform is like, people are like, oh, you should interview Floyd Norman and Bruce W. Smith and Peter Ramsey. And it's like, first of all, duh. But also these other people are important as well. And that's what I like about highlighting them is that I remember reaching out to one guy, and he was a background designer at Disney. And I reached out to him about coming on my platform, and he was like, you know, I'm not an animator, right? I'm like, yes. You know, I don't still work at Disney. Like, yes, you Black and you in animation. Like, that's the point. And so there's this like hierarchy of like, at the initial, like when Disney was just starting, like, no, none of the artists really got the shine. But then once they started getting the shine, it was like only the animators that got the shine. And so people think everybody is an animator. And so he's a background designer. So he's like, are you sure you want to highlight me? I'm not an animator. like, yes, what you did was important as well. And so I like just as much, like I obviously want to interview Floyd Norman. I'm supposed to be interviewing him soon. and I do have contact information for the other people I mentioned, but like the people who you have never heard of, like I like highlighting them too. So
That's awesome. It's got to be so interesting to like have these conversations with people who are the OGs of the business or the ones that are just not getting the shine. And
yeah.
it's got to be great for them, but it's also got to be great for you. As you started in this industry, did you like have mentors in how to do this work, or have you just been sort of bumping around and figuring it out for yourself?
So I was blessed to be able to take a 3D class my first year at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York. I was able to take a 3D class my spring quarter, and so my the teacher assistant, his name's Karabo Leguela. He's from Botswana. He was getting his master's, and he was the teacher's assistant in my first 3D class, and so he's been a mentor since then. My friend AJ Moore, I can never remember the platform we met him on, but it was like one of those things where, you know, it was like something tunes, like because it doesn't exist anymore. But it was one of those things where you're like going on the website to see if you could see other Black people, and I'm like, yes, friend that person. And so that's how we met. We didn't even meet in person until several years after we known each other. And so that was another one of my mentors. And then one of my current, like Karabo is still one of my mentors. And then my current one is Andre Rodriguez. He was one of the people in the live this morning. And like, it was a thing where I don't even know how we became Facebook friends, but I had posted something and he wrote in the comments like, yeah, I agree, something like that, and then like send me something or something like that, and I sent it, and then since then we've been like ride or die. Because with Andre, he is so refreshing because he do not care. like his name is Andre Rodriguez, but he grew up with his Black mama, and so he Black. And so like sometimes in the animation industry, like it is the safe haven for people who are outcasts, and so there are like the blurred nerd, all that type of stuff, the people who watch anime, people who watch this, you know. But you know, with me like being also involved in the Urban League movement while I'm in the animation industry, that is very rare. Like for that to be, because when I'm going to conferences, I ain't seeing nobody else in the animation industry. And so like to meet people who are just like kind of like me, where like for others in the animation industry, this is their safe haven, but then I kind of end up not being an outcast, but like I don't have things in common with people because I do not like anime or watch it, and I have not seen every Star Wars. Like I have seen The Mandalorian, I do watch Star Wars sometimes, but I'm not like a lot of spaces, like when I go to these conferences or festivals and I'm like going to like these panels and I'm like, yes, this is not interesting to me. So it's cool to meet people like me in the industry.
Wow, so you have not watched all the Star Wars?
Well, I'm pretty sure I watched the first 3. I'm not sure if I watched the second 3, and then like all the tangential stuff. Like I watched Mandalorian. I started the first episode of Obi-Wan, like, but like it's not that I'm not interested. It's just not a priority.
Okay, I will forgive you. I mean, granted, I'm a Star Trek fan, but as much as I'm a Star Trek fan, so like if you ever ask me like which one, I'm going to say Star Trek. Like there's never going to be a question. It's always going to be Star Trek. But then like you start talking about Star Wars and I can pretty much hold my own in that conversation too. I have watched everything.
Trek, like though every iteration of Star Trek is like, yeah, we about diversity.
Yeah. And I mean, even like if you watch the latest Star Wars, there was a whole thing with like, and I haven't finished this newest Star Wars because you know the way they roll it out on Disney Plus is episode.
Yeah.
So I haven't finished the latest one yet, but I will probably finish that this weekend. But there was like this new black character,
Yeah.
and
Black
they were
woman.
talking about how she wasn't being accepted because you know racism and
Yeah.
sci-fi worlds and all that other fun worlds and stuff. And so Star Trek was like, you're always welcome here, you know? And I'm like, and this is why Star Trek is better than Star Wars, because we're like, hey, welcome to the family.
Even something that's unprecedented is like one of the co-producers who I think actually acts in Obi-Wan as well, like went to his Twitter to like defend her. And he's a white man. And so that's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
y'all really okay. Y'all allies.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, because like I don't get into all the crazy racism fandom stuff, but like even with Star Trek, the crazy thing is that everybody loves Star Trek, and fascinatingly, both, and there's like a YouTube video about like what we are hearing when we watch Star Trek. So like the red and the blue teams both love Star Trek, but we're listening to very different things and missing some of us, Team
Right.
Red, are missing, you know, what the like heart of Star Trek is.
And that's happening across so many fandoms, like the Marvel universe, what Stan Lee did, like so much stuff is like he created X-Men with like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in mind. Like, what were y'all reading, Red Team? Like,
I mean, Stan Lee is from like he's from the Bronx. Like, high school is down the
it's
block
like
for me.
all these people are like social justice warrior, and it's like this is what it was from the beginning. What are you even talking about?
Yeah, it's amazing how much people missed the mark in what was happening in these worlds and how welcoming these worlds were. I mean, just think about who the X-Men were. Like, they're a bunch of people who have all these different talents that make them outcast in the society, and yet they're still saving the world.
And like to interview on my platform to interview Larry Houston, who was the director of X-Men the animated series, which is one of the most popular X-Men like properties, to have people like, because he does a lot of Comic-Cons and stuff like that, to have people come up to him and be like, I was about to commit suicide and then I found X-Men animated series and it made me feel like better.
That has to be amazing to have heard that from. Yeah.
So,
and I mean,
like I was about to commit suicide, but I didn't want to miss X-Men episode.
Like, could you imagine? And thinking your work may not have really, not thinking how important your work is, and then hearing that, you know?
Even on the live this morning, somebody popped in, was like, I just wanted to let you know, and they were in the comments, like, I just wanted to let you know that like you created a video about HBCUs that have animation programs, and I'm about to go to Virginia State this fall. Like, thank you. Like, wow. And then a couple weeks ago, I went to like a little picnic for Black and Animated, and like the first group I went up to talk to, this young lady was like, "Oh, you're like, can I have a hug?" I was like, yes. Like, I watch your stuff. Like, so that's cool.
Well, can I also just tell you, this is a totally side note, but I'm very jealous that you met Kev on stage.
I've been like a couple times, actually.
So I'm just gonna tell you, I'm very jealous about this.
Yes. Like the first time I met him, like I got the is this the first time? Like, because he would come to New Orleans for his comedy shows, and like I don't know if this is the first time, but one time I met him, I purposely got the VIP tickets because we was in the front and we got to go on stage to like shake their hands first. And I remember it was like Tahir, Tony, Kev on stage, and it might have been Doughboy when they were still talking. And I just like mentioned the Kev on stage, like, yeah, I'm in animation. I know you're one of your sons. And so he's like, oh yeah. And then he like chased me off the stage and was like, oh, like, here's my email, like, contact me. Nothing ever came of it, but he like was thinking of his son. And then there was another time they came for Essence, and they're at Essence now. And I went to one of their meetups, and like I gave them there's this thing called Sticky Bones, and I was part of their like Indiegogo or whatever, and so I had 2 of them, and so I was like, here's one for your son. So a couple of those videos I got on my YouTube channel, like meeting Kev on stage, and then like I was on a Instagram live with Lil Rel and his kids. And so yeah,
I'm just telling you, I'm very jealous. Like it just popped into my head as I'm thinking about it. I was like, wait, I know you.
like Kev on stage, like even when I was like underemployed, I was still a part of the Patreon, because like Kev on stage, I'm just amazed at, like, he's like a distant mentor, because like I'm just amazed at the community he has created, and how the people on the Patreon and in his Discord will like be begging to give him money. Like, please make a shirt so we can give you money. And I'm like, how do I create a community like that, where they are down, like sometimes when they can't do a YouTube, like a live of one of their podcasts, or have to go on vacation, like they're like, oh, you know, came on stage, and Liz is like, oh, I'm sorry, and they're like, take a break. Like, and so they're very understanding, and you know, I'm part of the community, but it's just like, how did he build this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's his personality. I think it's partially his personality, because I don't know how I started following him, but I just and I mean, it's definitely, and it, like, you don't remember, like, because especially with all this stuff on social media, you don't remember when you start seeing their videos. But I definitely started seeing, like, when he would throw stuff back from like what they were originally doing, or not originally doing, but like early stuff. I definitely remember the video of them after going to see Black Panther. And so like some of those early stuff, I'm like, oh, I remember him when he was just a goatee. Like I remember when he started growing a beard. So I've been rocking with him for a little while, but not as long as other people have.
I feel like one of my first videos, because I've been following him since the Playmakers, actually his brother Jason was actually my favorite person. Like, and like when I went to the Essence, I was like, I get to meet Jason, and then he wasn't there, and I was like, damn it. Like,
wow.
So one of the first videos I knew of them was stuff church girls say. Is that my note? Is that my note? Like, and so yeah,
I didn't know the Playmakers. I wasn't around for Playmakers. I came after that, but that's still that's a real fan right there. I've been around that long.
So, like, I was like, because like it was just that Jason, they weren't making, because I guess he moved from Washington, so it was just still kept on stage making the videos. If Jason would have went off, I'd have been like, I'm following Jason, because he's just so hilarious to me. But I love Kev on stage too, so I'm a fan.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy Kev on stage. I enjoy the whole crew. I was really sad about seeing him and Doughboy split, however they split.
Yeah,
I still have feelings, but
I still have one of the videos saved, like one of the little snippets of like when Doughboy and Kev on stage were they had the Righteous and Ratchet, and like Kev was talking about like, you know, the Gucci glasses, and he's like, I only got Gucci and Prada, like, can I wear either one of them? And then like they started talking about contacts, and Doughboy was like, there's Gucci contacts? And they start like cracking up. So I still got that clip saved of like, he was just like, Kev was like, why would you think there are Gucci contacts? Because they're like the logo on the contact. Like,
could you imagine though if there was?
It's gonna happen at some point, but yeah.
It's bound to. That's hilarious. Yeah. So is there a fun fact about yourself you're willing to share?
Let's see. Fun fact. Because my usual fun facts are that I'm a twin, and that I've worked in Korea. So I'm like, what additional fun facts do I have? Those are my go-tos. Truth, and a lie. Let's see. I'm sure I do have more fun facts. I played 4 years varsity basketball.
Nice.
And I have always been slow. So my freshman year playing varsity, I was a guard. And my coach at the time there was like a time, the shortest time to do like a down and back or like a suicide, which if you don't know what a suicide is, it's like going to free throw line back, half court back, other free throw line back, full court back. And so we were doing suicides, and the guards had to do the lowest time, the forwards had to do this time, and the centers had to do this time. And we had like multiple of these suicides to do. On the first suicide, I did not make the time. And so my basketball teammates was like, damn, like what? We're not even tired yet. I'm like, I'm slow, man. Like, what? I need the center time. I don't need the guard time. Like, and then fast forward to like when I'm in upstate New York, and like I can't walk because I went to school with a bunch of people in New York City. Like I can't walk as fast as y'all be walking. I can't. And like when I was like joining my sorority, you're supposed to like walk fast, and I'm like, this is as fast as I can walk. Like, yeah. And so I'm like, I have always been slow. Like, I'm sorry, I cannot walk fast.
That's okay. I think it's as long as, at least if you're in New York, as long as you know how to navigate, then it's the slow walking is not particularly a huge problem, because I'm not a fast walker. I have my moments, but it's more about knowing how to get out of people's way. Yeah. So as long as you walk in a way that everyone else can move around you, then there's no issues. Now, if you don't do it correctly,
like all my line sisters are from New York City, so like just like the holding the backpack and walking, like I can't.
Oh yeah, no, you'll be left behind. Sorry.
I cannot walk that fast. So yeah. My fun fact: I played 4 years varsity basketball. I'm sure I have more interesting facts, but I can't think of them now.
It's cool. It's cool. We now know that you were varsity and that you just are not you're a slow walker, and that's okay.
And I scored like for one game. It might have been my senior year. I scored the winning shot for one of my games, and like had that experience of everybody like running for me and like tackling me. Which that story is like on one of the previous possessions, I actually fouled a girl, and so we were like up. Let's see, we were maybe tied or something, and I fouled the girl. I'm like, dang it, it's the end of the game. I done fouled them. They gonna hate me. And then she had 2 free throws, and she only made 1. So whatever the math is, when she made that one shot, we were down by maybe 2. And then we go to the other side of the court. I'm on the right wing, like one of the point guards like swing it to that side. Like first of all, she didn't shoot. Swing it to that side, she didn't shoot. Swing it back to the middle, she didn't shoot. I'm like, the time is going down. So by the time they like swing it to me on the right, I'm not even at the 3-point line. I'm like feet back from the three-point line, and I'm just like, and it goes in, and I'm like, oh, we won. And so this was like before that, I was like pissed, like which one of y'all is gonna shoot? Like the time is going down. We need to try to win. And so I like did a super duper NBA 3-pointer and won the game for us. Woo! And then fast forward to like at one of the conferences, I don't even remember which city, but they had a little sports thing. And like I guess it might have been for the southern region or something like that. So I did the little basketball portion, and I remember I still got the video somewhere, and I remember at first when I was shooting, I'm like, ooh, these is some NBA threes, these is not regular threes, these not air balls. And then I made a shot for, I think, southern region. I think that's how it was split up. So I made the shot because and there were men who did not make the shot, so I just want to say that.
Okay, now so
I represented it.
You were headed to your goal of being that older woman who's still gonna be able to hold it down on the court. There you go.
There are several men in YP that did not make a shot, and I did.
There you go. Okay, now. So I'm down to like my last 2 sort of questions. We sort of talked about it already, but is there something about the state of your community that frustrates you?
I think after George Floyd died, there was a lot of activation in a lot of communities. And so from my vantage point, particularly on Twitter, after George Floyd's death, I remember Brianna, is it Smith? Brianna Williams from Black and Animated. I remember she tweeted, all caps, hire more Black animators. I don't know how long after that, but it was like people, after he died on video, like people had this fervor, because she's very like quiet to herself and all that stuff, but it just built up something in a lot of people. And so I remember her tweeting, hire more Black animators. And I remember being in those comments being like, because, you know, they always be like, hire the most qualified. Like, so do you think Black people ain't qualified? Because what is the problem? And so, you know, all that stuff. And then, so there was like three in the art community, art/animation community, there was like three waves. Like first was like Black animation, where she was the catalyst for that. And then the second wave was like a bunch of people in the comic book and animation industry, like a bunch of dudes being outed as like being sexual predators. And so that was a wave. And the third wave that I saw was like students at various universities outing their professors as being racist. And so there was like a lot of like Instagram accounts that were created where they were having some people submit their encounter that they had with various professors. And sometimes they would name the professors, but all of it was anonymous. So it was like, this school, a lot of people saying like what happened. And so the frustration was like all this performative stuff that companies did after George Floyd with the black background with the white text. And I said this morning, the only people I believed was Sesame Street, because Sesame Street is not new to this, they true to this. And Sesame Street, fun fact, was actually created for people of color. Like it was created for us. And then if Ben and Jerry said something, I believe them too. Like the Ben and Jerry's, like, because there's Ben and Jerry's the company, and there's Ben and Jerry's like the foundation where the founders are still part of it. Like whatever they said, I believe that too, because they got the Colin Kaepernick ice cream and all that stuff. So
I actually went to, wait, where's Ben and Jerry's in Vermont? So because Oberlin, one of them is an alum of Oberlin. And so when you get accepted to Oberlin, they actually send you, at least they used to, a discount for Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Because I got accepted to Oberlin. Unfortunately, I was not able to go. So I went to Vermont this past summer, and we went to Ben and Jerry's in Vermont to go to the factory, but the factory was closed because of COVID, or I think it was because of COVID, but you can still get ice cream at the factory. And so inside, they have this whole great mural for oh gosh, how did I just do it? How did I forget his name? And this is terrible.
Alan?
No, for Lewis.
Farrakhan?
No.
I'm like,
Well, across the bridge.
John Lewis.
John Lewis. Thank you. I was like, my brain was like not. I was like, I know it's Lewis. I can see his face in my head. But there's a huge mural right there, and like as you go to get the ice cream, as you go online, a giant mural for him, and it's about like his history and all of that. So that's like really amazing to walk into the factory and to order your ice cream, and like everyone who's there, you can't miss it. Like you just so they about that life. And so yes, I agree with you that if Ben and Jerry says it, they about that. So
yes, like we've talked about it on several platforms since then, but there was like this performative thing behind it, and like a lot of people were like, oh, we're going to hire Black animation professionals, we're going to do this. A lot of people were reached out to for jobs, and then they never ended up getting the job. A lot of people were reached out to for opportunities, and a lot of people were ghosted by various companies and people who claimed that they were allies and were going to do something for diversity. So that's a frustrating part of like both Black and Animated and Abel Hayford. She has a hashtag drawing while Black. So every year during a particular month, like people do the drawing while Black, and then you can find Black artists and stuff like that. Abel came out with a list, and people would hit them up for their list and just be sending any jobs to these people, like, or like they're looking for an animator and they're just sending it to the whole list, like not even siphoning out like which people are actually doing animation, not like illustrators or background designers, all that stuff. So they were improperly using the list. So she ended up locking down her list because they were improperly using it so much. And so this like facade of like people saying that they were going to do something, but then they never actually did it. And they did the black background with the white text, but it was like performative.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's the case so many places. And I think they are even if they are even if they are trying to be more DEI focused, the issue with that is DEI is so, a diversity word is so large that any minority, even your quote unquote model minorities, fill that bill. Like essentially the problem with affirmative action was that once they said that white women counted,
yes, they benefited the most.
Exactly, they benefited the most. And so I think even still today that some of that is happening, that they're filling their diverse quotas with different groups that still would benefit more than the ones that are more severely disadvantaged or ignored. And that's still a problem.
I don't even try to use the term POC or BIPOC because like there's never like, unless you're just kind of just mentioning all people that are non-white, then yeah, POC is a phrase, but there's literally never any conversation where you should say POC because like not should, but you're usually talking about Black people and people like to say use POC, or you're talking about Asian people, or you're talking about Hispanic people. Like you're not usually talking about, because I've had like a supervisor who's like, oh, we want to hire a POC, and I'm like, what you're actually saying is a Black person, in the context of what she was like in context, because I'm not gonna say just to not reveal it, but like in context she meant a Black person, but they will use POC instead of the word Black, or instead of the word Hispanic, and instead of the word Asian. And then something I realized about BIPOC was that in Canada, they use IBPOC, IB. So it's like who, like not necessarily who deserves to be first, the Black people or the Indigenous people, but why are we creating this term, another term that is like, is unnecessary. Because like in America, it's usually like Black, Indigenous, and then POC, and then like why don't they get their own letters? And I understand why the B and I get their own letters, but then in Canada, I saw it was like Indigenous Black, and it's like if we had a tussle for who's first, this acronym is not. Just talk about who you're talking about. Like you're usually talking about Indigenous people, or you're talking about Black people. So just use the term that you mean.
So it's interesting because, you know, I've had this conversation about BIPOC before, and I think part of the, and I don't know enough about Canada's history. So I could see why they would flip the letters, in part because they were not in the same levels of colonial. I mean, they have their own stuff, but you know, there's a lot of Indigenous stuff in their history. So I could see Indigenous being their main focus first.
Indigenous are
but I could also but it's interesting because BIPOC here has had two different meanings. And so I stopped using it once I realized the meaning shifted, because it used to be Black and Indigenous people of color. And so you were primarily talking about Black and Indigenous people.
Right.
Period. And then it started flipping to Black, Indigenous, and then people of color. So it was now everyone who was POC, and that becomes a different meaning. But when you were talking about the original sins of America, you were often talking about Black and Indigenous people, because the massacre of Indigenous people and the transportation of Black folks. So that's where initially, that's what that definition was being translated to. And then it sort of became this BIPOC being just everyone.
We can't never be just talking about Black people, or can't never be just talking about Indigenous people. Like
And so it just became like this. And so like after a while, I was like, well, then it doesn't work if it's everyone, like it's just POC again, because just POC, and is that not what we're talking about? But like if we kept with the Black and Indigenous people of color, if it's just that meaning, then you can at times really be speaking about those two communities. If we're talking about the original sins of the United States, you know, if we're talking about, I mean, there's still so much in the original sins of the United States, but we're trying to like narrow in the conversation. You could possibly like narrow into these two populations, you know, but it did become Black and Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
And that's
when it comes that, it becomes too much.
About like all these like people not realizing the start of why something existed, like Me Too, people only thinking of it as a hashtag and not what's her name, Burke?
Yeah, Tarana Burke.
That's her organization, and then white women commandeered the hashtag. Or what else? Say her name. Say his name annoys me, because Say Her Name was created because Black women get left out in the conversation of Black people dying. And so Say His Name don't make no sense because we're always saying his name. I remember I had a Facebook status and I just was like, the gist of it was that you could sit here right now and be able to name possibly 10 men who have died at the hand of police or white people. To hear Tamir Rice, Florida.
There's a lot of people we know.
Yeah. But you can't do the same for Black women.
You started Sandra Bland, you may get to like 3 more, and then you start going like, wait, I know there's some more.
Yeah. So it's just like, Say Her Name was created for that reason. So to see people say his name, it's like, you're commandeering something that was created for a specific purpose. And I get it, but that's not right.
I mean, Say His Name is Blue Lives Matter. It's All Lives Matter. It's the same.
And that's not to say it's not important when Black men like die, but we like
always say his name.
Sometimes when you're in conversation with Black men, they talk as though Black women are not dying or enduring racism as well. like what you think we're not Black and we're not enduring the same thing, y'all? Like, because they're like, oh, but we're dying at, you know, larger numbers or something like that. And it's like, well, Black women are actually dying at large numbers, maybe not as large as y'all numbers, but we're still dying. Like, one is too much. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
The Oppression Olympics, like.
Yeah. And yeah, we don't get the same media, but we sure as heck are getting it too. There's that one woman, and I would never remember her name because there's too many names at this point. But there's that one woman that they sat there and they planned how they were going to diffuse the situation, because it was very clear that she was having a mental health break, and they had the whole plan. And then 2 seconds later, they slaughtered her.
Right.
Like, you made this whole plan of how you're going to diffuse the situation, and then you just went and killed her. Okay, great, thanks. You know, so it's and that all feeds back into the very subtle microaggressions that we experience in our different industries. So I'm sorry that it seems to have been performative in your industry, but hopefully it doesn't stop. And I think what you're doing,
a lot of projects like Louder and Prouder just came out again, and that is very inclusive. If you haven't seen on Disney Plus, like, there are so many new characters that is very inclusive. Dad of Bounty Hunter, Everett Downing Jr. is coming out with that should be coming out soon. I interviewed a guy, Hamid Ibrahim. I interviewed him on my platform. He's part of Kugali Media. He's I don't want to lie, he's from an African country. I don't want to say the wrong one. And his they're all from various African countries, and they are working with Disney for Iwaju, which is an Afrofuturism storyline. So there is stuff that's happening. It's just like it takes time to have it come out. But there is stuff that from that era, or even before that era, like that was happening. They were trying to do stuff because they had that announcement where Baymax, Princess Tiana, Zootopia, and there was like a fourth one where those are all diverse like things, and they were like, oh, we're coming out with TV series, so those are still supposed to be coming out, I believe. So there is like some improvement, but I feel like, you know, sometimes people act like we have short memories or that we're dumb, and was like, yeah, we're not though.
Well, I thank you for amplifying the people who are out there already.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's huge. I think it's huge that you're doing it, and that um just to know that there's a whole community. Like I would never think about it. And I'm just like, oh, I love animation. So I'm just like, oh, more animation. Great. Like my brain is not gonna go that deep into like,
Yeah.
who is the person behind the animation?
I'm a huge advocate that animation is not just for kids. It is a medium, it is not a genre.
Yes, thank you. So how do we support you and the community?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do we tap in and make sure we are one advocating for the community, and then also how do we find and follow you?
Well, you can follow me on at Black Woman Animator, BLKWMN Animator on all platforms. I've also done a rebranding for my personal work. So if you want to check out any of my personal work, it's Deb the 3D Modeler. And a big way that you can support us is to reprogram your brain and not think that animation is just for kids. And so when we come out with stuff that is Black, watch it. And so I have a video on my channel called the Black Animation Ecosystem, and that video is like trying to outline maybe how can we tap into what Black culture, particularly Black American culture, is already interested in, and then try to get more audience, and then like build up like indie projects that are, you know, not just kid focused, but also adult focused. And so trying to convince more Black Americans that animation can be enjoyed by adults. And so if you see something like if it's for kids, then like try to have your kids watch it, but if it's for adults, give it a chance. Yeah.
Awesome.
And check out the Ludacris thing on Netflix. That was good. Dang it, what is that called? That was really good. Ludacris animated show. Yes. Karma's World.
Okay.
That was cute because she got, you know, episode about bonnets. She got all the episodes, and so I am like, this is research. but yeah, like if you are open to all kind of storylines and you're an adult, feel free to go watch Karma's World on Netflix.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here. Thank you, Deborah, for speaking with us on behalf of. This has been really informative and really dope. And I'm gonna have to watch animation from a different perspective and lens now. Because I definitely, I mean, I always I have not been so good on my Saturday cartoons and stuff, but I was good. I was on it until probably this last year. This last like 365 days, I've been like, whatever my TV is on, that's what I'm watching.
So watch like Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix, Arcane on Netflix, Invincible on Amazon Prime. That's for adults. Do not have your children watch that. There's a lot of gratuitous violence. So yeah, watch all that stuff. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And thank you everyone for listening on behalf of. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you, everyone.